Hello and welcome to the Dash Podcast, episode 135. I'm Mark Mason and I'm joined by my fellow co-host and amigo, Joel Valenzuela. Happy Friday, Joel.
Happy Friday to you too. Are you feeling the cheer?
I certainly am. And today's episode is a special episode. Why? Because it's the Christmas special. And who better to have a special guest on the podcast, no other than Amanda B. Johnson. How's it going, Amanda?
Going great. Trying to get situated so I'm straight in my seat. Good. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast. And I just thought it'd be a great opportunity to take this time to really reflect on 2019 for Dash. We can look at some of the achievements, developments, integrations. So much has happened. The diff, the trust protectors, but there's also, although we can reflect, there's a lot to look forward to in the future for 2020 with Dash Platform, hopefully Evo Testnet at the end of the month. So there's a lot to discuss. And I just want to really focus on like a few highlights because it's easy to forget what's happened over this past year. You know, we've had chain locks, long-living Masternode quorums, automatic instant send. I always forget that. Instantly respendable Dash payments. I mean, so much has happened. But I think we can all agree that although 2019 price-wise in terms of coin market cap has been disappointing for most people in the cryptocurrency space, in terms of Dash Core Group and in terms of development and software releases, it's been the best year to date. Amanda, would you agree with that?
Yeah.
It's been pretty impressive, right? So in terms of development, Dash Core Group, that on that side of things, are you still happy with Dash and the way things are in terms of like the developments? Because they've been coming out faster and faster and faster.
Was that question toward me?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, so yeah. So I mean, happy with Dash developments as coming from Dash Core Group. I mean, as you've just highlighted with your list, Mark, on the development front, we are pretty much like well on the trajectory to the moon on the development front.
Yes, and one thing in particular this year, which is very unique to Dash, is the DIF, the Dash Investment Foundation. And this is the first ownerless, memberless foundation. Is that the right way to describe it?
Yes, it's the world's first ownerless and memberless investment fund.
Excellent. And for those that don't know, we were just discussing, Amanda does weekly updates for the DIF, and they are posted to the DashPay subreddit. So if you're not on there, now you know where to go. And also, Amanda, you tweet those out as well, right?
Yes, the Dash Investment Foundation has a Twitter. It's at Dash Invests. And yes, there are weekly updates on our activities that you can follow that if you on Twitter. Yeah. Excellent.
So what's the current state of play with the diff? Because obviously the treasury is down right now, but behind the scenes, I imagine you guys have weekends or what. So can you give us like an inside look? What's actually going on behind the scenes? How do you guys operate on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. So our primary point of contact is a once weekly meeting that we hold on Mondays. And so that's the 6 of us. It used to be the 4 of us, right? But then we released the directors/supervisors, Glenn Kennedy and Casey McDonald, from their roles as supervisors. And we took on the next most voted supervisors from the Dash network. And so now there are 6 of us. And we meet on a weekly basis for between an hour to 2 hours to go over inbound inquiries, as well as we've done a few outbound inquiries in that some of our members have brought in companies that they thought might be investable, and they pitched it to the rest of us supervisors and said, would you be willing to, meet with these people? We've said yes or no. And so during our Monday calls, we both schedule our discovery calls to come, as well as review the discovery calls we had over the past week, and then make decisions on, hey, do we want to have a second call with this company? Or are we've heard all we need to hear, that's not going to work out for us at this time.
Excellent. So the diff actually is getting investment opportunities and pitch decks put forward, and you are reviewing them right now?
Yes, have been for 2 or 3 months at this point. And we are also currently interviewing, and maybe even have moved beyond the interviewing process to the negotiating process at this point, for an investment consultant to be brought on to our, like a professional investment consultant / manager. I'm not sure what the exact term is, but yeah.
Wow. So that actually sounds quite promising, because I remember there was a big, heavy debate in the Masternode only channel, because initially when the diff was first announced, I think in Ryan's initial blog post, there was meant to be like an investment manager from the beginning. But then, of course, because of the price throughout the year, then people were talking, saying like, well, we need to really build up a treasure chest in the diff first before we get an investment manager. But I think that's quite a promising sign then. So things are obviously moving forward within the diff.
Oh, very much so. It's been a wild ride for me. So when we first got things kicked off, like 6 months ago, like shortly after the elections took place, our first meeting, it was our first call. It was the four of us. It was Haitham, Jan, Mike, and me. And then we had our first call was scheduled with the two pre-appointed directors, so Glenn and Casey. And I get on the call, and my expectations going in were that directors directed, that they were more or less, had the vision, had the plan, and were more or less in charge, and that we elected four would just supervise what it was that they were directing. And it turned out to be not that. And so basically Glenn and Casey said, hey, we're just here to do what you instruct us to do in terms of our licensure to, execute legal documents for you and to execute like accounting processes for you. And that's all we're here to do. And that was so topsy-turvy from what I had expected coming in that I had some major anxiety at the beginning, because to me, it felt like the four of us were like all Indians and no chiefs. And it started just feeling like the Hunger Games or like the Lord of the Flies. And I was just like, are we supposed to like throw down for chiefdom? Like, I was so stressed. You can ask any of the guys. I was so stressed early on. I even had like a little meltdown one day. But anyway, thankfully, we're past all of that. And things have, just like Ryan Taylor told us they would, things have slowly like fallen into place and gelled. And people have just naturally gravitated to the roles that they perform best in. And so, yeah, so it's been super great to, again, get the two additional members, Cole and Spencer, on board. And I'm very, very hopeful in terms of the person or people we bring on as investment consultants going forward. Because, yeah, I mean, we supervisors, we all certainly have, various life experiences that and trust within the community that caused people to want to vote for us to supervise things on their behalf. But none of us is an investment professional, as everybody knows. And so in the interview process that we've been having with investment professionals, we've been throwing at them like sample cases, or even like with limited information, we've been throwing them like some real companies that we've looked at and said, hey, so this is what we thought about this. What would you have done? Like, how would you have proceeded? And just hearing them, riff things off the tops of their heads, we're like, okay, so that is how a professional does it. This is where we want to go. And granted, we are working with the same restrictions right now that every other DFO is working with, which is a major loss in the price of Dash. What's more, earlier, 3 months ago, we put out a poll asking the network, how do you want us to hold our reserves? The number one choice was hold it all in Dash. And since then, the price of Dash has fallen like 40%. So our reserves have fallen 40%. We're convinced we're convinced that just that process in general is not the best way to do reserves. And we are currently re-engineering a reserves policy that we think is going to be better for everybody. It's going to help. It's going to let us do a better job for all of you. And yeah, so I'm feeling great about the diff.
That's interesting. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because I remember that poll, and it was interesting because there was about like 6 different options available. So just to give a backstory, because there may be some people that aren't even familiar with a diff. I guess we should probably start from the very basics, because if it's the first time someone's actually hearing about the Dash Investment Foundation, they might be scratching their head saying, okay, it sounds interesting. But I guess, Amanda, the most basic question is, for people that are new to the diff, how does the Dash Investment Foundation benefit Dash?
Sure. So in any decentralized network, of which Dash is one, there is, at face value, there is a total inability for that network to collectively own real assets as a whole. For not the least of which being that we don't even know who the members of the network are on any given day. And even if we did, the members of the network change from day to day, even from hour to hour or minute to minute. And so in what way could all of the members of a decentralized network on a given day collectively own something? And so the brilliant mind that is Ryan Taylor, CEO of Dash Core Group, got to pondering this very question years ago. And through the assistance of multiple law firms, he was able to arrive at the idea of creating a fund that would have the ability to ask for all of its reserves, all of its funding from the Dash treasury system, right? And that's a system that pays out once a month based on the votes of everybody who owns Dash. If one owns 1,000 Dash and runs a Masternode, that's one vote. But if one owns less than that and runs a Masternode collectively with the Dash of others to make it up to that 1,000, then that node gets a vote too. And so technically, through one step or another, anybody who owns even one Dash can have a say in what the network does with its monthly treasury. And so through the assistance of these law firms, Mr. Taylor selected the Cayman Islands as a jurisdiction because it recently began offering this particular corporate type, which would allow for a fund to be established that wouldn't have to say, okay, the members of this fund are John Q. Henry and Elizabeth P. Smith, and et cetera, but rather that fund would be able to be without owners and without members. And the way that that could benefit the Dash network is if the fund were to be supervised by people who the Dash network trusts and directly votes for. And if those supervisors were to create, as their mission to basically further the interests of Dash with any and all funding that is allocated to them. So this is definitely a world first. I'm able to say that with confidence because the lawyers told us that it's a world first. It's definitely not something that any other cryptocurrency has at this time. If there were to be any investment fund that's related to any other cryptocurrency, that fund would not be ownable and controllable by the network as a whole, whereas the Dash Investment Foundation actually is. I am legally beholden to serve the interests of the people who elected me. And so that's super rad.
Have you considered, how much, are you allowed to say how much the diff holds right now? Is it like 1,500 Dash or something like that?
No, I actually, to me, it's very important to be quite public at this time as to our reserves. Because anybody who's following our block payouts already knows how much we have. So, we don't, we keep them, aside from moving them into more secure storage, we're not moving them all about in ways that would be unaccountable. So if you're following the payments, you already know how much we have. But B, I think there's actually, and this is something I haven't, it's actually on our agenda for next Monday's meeting. I haven't brought it up yet in the meeting, but I think the idea of publicly tracking both the diff's reserves and assets is actually exciting. Because I'm thinking, okay, if I weren't a member of the diff but I were a Dash investor, I would want to know okay, how much is in my savings account? How much oomph do I feel like I have behind my investment? And so I would actually like to see a sort of, maybe even a tracker page on the dashinvests.org website so that all Dash holders everywhere, regardless of how much Dash they own, can go monitor in real time, like how much is there behind my coin, behind my investment? Because I want people to get excited about allocating additional, like I want people to get excited about voting funds toward the diff, because they can see their savings account and their like portfolio grow in real time.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Have you considered using some of the Dash to put in a Masternode in the time being? I mean, obviously, you would have to disclose that you wouldn't vote on it, especially for your own proposals. But I mean, like, you're going to get like 6.4% right now doing that. And of course, you'll be helping the network. Have you had that conversation?
So we've actually had that conversation several times. And we have not, I mean, there was the idea of let's put it up again in another poll to see how the network wants us to hold it. And there's even disagreement internally. Like some of us say, yes, let's put the reserves in a Masternode while we're holding them. Others of us say, no, I don't want to put them, because the argument for the no side is that every Masternode that's spun up, technically it decreases the frequency of payouts for every other node on the network. And so my question has been, is it the job of the diff to decrease the payouts of every other node on the network? But then at the same time, the pro argument for it is, okay, well, if we don't put the reserves in masternodes, then that means we're not making any residual income on them to offset the cost of securely storing those reserves. And so when looked at that way, it actually might go either way. It's like, okay, either we have to spend a little more administratively to store those funds, or we spin them up in a masternode, they can pay for their own storage, and then, you know, the infinitesimal decrease in the frequency of payouts throughout the network. And so that's something that we're actually actively debating and moving toward a resolution on.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like from a very basic perspective, it seems like a responsible thing to do to, as a steward of funds, to make sure you have recurring income. But then when you realize that what that's doing is that is now having the master network sort of pay for a little bit in addition to just the treasury for it, it becomes a little bit more of a complicated question. I'm not quite exactly sure where I'd stand on that. I do think that it's interesting, especially if you consider the treasury to be too small right now, which, you know, some people do, some people don't. And you say you'd rather, that is kind of one way of allocating Masternode, a portion of the Masternode rewards towards the diff, is having the diff actually run a Masternode. So it's an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, and so now we've kind of covered the basics of the diff and the current state of play. Let's talk about that Masternode only poll again. So there was 6 options, I believe, put forward to the network on how the diff should hold their reserves. And there were 6 options. I think the first 3 was 100% Dash, second one was 100% USD, and then the third option was 100% gold. And then the final 3 versions were like a mishmash, like Dash and gold, Dash and dollars, or dollars and gold. And the conclusion that the Masternode network voted on was 100% Dash. Now, hindsight is a wonderful thing. And looking back now at the price, especially those masternodes that, you know, their investment, they've seen what's happened to the crypto price in terms of diversification, holding those things. Now, I don't know. I'm guessing now that they might be second guessing that decision that they made. But it's interesting that you guys are talking about that within the diff, because thinking about it now, it makes total sense, really. And I kind of wish that we did mix things up, because I'm just speculating here, but would it be fair to say that a number of the investment opportunities that are coming to the diff seek funding in US dollars and not Dash? So you would have to switch it up, right? Or is that not the case?
No, not necessarily. Many, if not most, of the potential investment partners we have spoken with thus far would be willing to accept Dash. Granted, I'm sure a lot of them would be changing it into dollars, either partially or in whole, upon receipt. But they're willing to accept it in Dash, most of them. And so, no, the purpose of the breaking it up into different assets was solely for preservation of purchasing power and for really stability of purchasing power.
Okay, so the diff applies to the network for funding to build up their their reserves to invest in opportunities. So they submit proposals to the network. The network allocates Dash to the diff, and then the diff invests that Dash they receive from the treasury into investment opportunities. So how does the network benefit back? How does it benefit them, right?
Amazing question. So this is something that we are asking ourselves all the time when it comes down to how much is something profitable directly, just in terms of like, okay, in how many years are we likely to begin seeing a return on the dollar value of the Dash that we sent to this company? Would we expect to become profitable in 3 years, 5 years, 8 years? Like, what's that expectation? And then on the other side, there's the sort of creeping temptation to be like, oh, well, we're not quite so sure about like the direct monetary profitability, but wouldn't it be cool if, because this business could be good for the Dash ecosystem in this way, or it could be good for the Dash ecosystem in this way. And that's a place that we've mentally explored many times. But I think the direction that the consensus that we are gradually arriving at is that really ventures more into the realm of business development. Like saying like, oh, I think this, business might be good for Dash because of, their media reach. Or, oh, I think this business might be good for Dash because of like, they're a payment processor and they have, all of these merchants and potential merchants. While those things are great and they should happen on some level somewhere within the DAO as a whole, I think we're slowly coming to the consensus, especially with having talked to these professional investment managers we've been interviewing recently, that anything that begins to resemble like business development is not the realm of the diff at this time, and that the diff rather exists to be profitable, purely profitable. And so the way that is beneficial to holders of Dash is that the diff can and intends to take any and all profits, and not necessarily all, obviously we'll develop a strategy for how much to reinvest versus how much to do what I'm about to say. We're able to take any portion of profits, and if they're not already in Dash, we are able to, and they probably wouldn't be, not for a while anyway. And we're able to buy Dash on the open market with them, right? But then that puts upward pressure on the price of Dash. And furthermore, the Dash that we buy, we are then willing and able to permanently remove from circulation, thereby shrinking the entire supply of Dash. And given, basic supply and demand, that should increase the purchasing power, the value of holding a Dash. And certainly there are all sorts of considerations to take into account when talking about something like a mass coin burning. For example, it would need to be announced publicly well ahead of time, right? So that it wouldn't be like insider information of like, like only a few people know, like, oh, we're going to burn 10,000 coins on December 8th, right? Like these are the kinds of things that would need to be handled very professionally so that everything was public and above board, and there could be no accusations of like, hey, that doesn't seem right. And yeah, a lot of stuff to work out.
Am I right in understanding, because I recall when Ryan first mentioned the diff on the podcast, it kind of caused a bit of an uproar in the after party and a bit of a heavy debate, because he used the term burn-in. I think that's what triggered people, but taking the Dash out of circulation, increasing scarcity, and also causing upward price movement on exchanges, which makes sense. But at the same time, it seems to... Here's the issue, right? I think Ryan said that there was a smart decision for taking the Dash out of circulation because of tax liabilities, right? It was the smartest thing to do for tax reasons, if I remember correctly. But here's the thing. If the purpose of the diff is to use profits to then reacquire Dash with profits and then take them out of circulation, then wouldn't it be best just to, instead of taking Dash from the treasury, just burn that Dash in the first place, because then you're going to have a 100% track record. Because if you're taking Dash from the treasury and then you're speculating and gambling on it, probably on a lot of high risk startups, then, and then you've got the cost of running the diff itself, which is probably problematic in itself. You might as well just skip to the end and just burn the Dash in the first place.
And if we were not generating more value than we were taking out of the treasury, you're absolutely right. We should not exist at all. So the only reason that this scenario works is if the diff is able to earn more value via its investments, that we are ultimately able to burn more Dash and or reinvest according to future sentiments of the network that have yet to be determined than was paid to us. Absolutely.
So here's an idea, right? So we're talking about reducing the supply of Dash in order to increase the value of the Dash held by current holders. Now, I mean, that's kind of when you put buy pressure on the market, et cetera, et cetera. Now, would the diff seek a fair rate, like a normal market rate when purchasing Dash? So for example, say you have 1,000 Dash. And so what can that get you? Or you have a $40,000 around. That can get you around 1,000 Dash. What if you try to buy 500 Dash for the same amount of money? You put in like a ridiculously large buy order. You don't buy and then destroy as much Dash, but then the actual price, it moves the price of Dash a little bit more in that way. Like, I mean, I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying, have you thought about something like that, of like putting deliberately higher buy orders than the actual market prices currently?
So that is a question that we have not ventured into at all. We have not, because we are far away from returning a profit at this point. Obviously, we're trying to get there as quickly as possible. But because we are not imminently moving toward being profitable, we haven't discussed the, how would we do the buy and burn exactly? And one reason another reason that I'm excited about some of the potential advisement we have coming on is that they're talking to us about this very thing. They're talking to us about, okay, well, actually, in a buy and burn scenario, this is what you're likely to see. This is what you're likely to have. And so this is how you're wanting to go about it. And so, I'm really hoping.
Exciting stuff.
I'm trying to play devil's advocate because I'm British and we're skeptical and we've got horrible weather and we always think the worst. Anything else is a bonus, right? So I'm just thinking of how this looks upon the outside, right? Because, I mean, it's kind of like price manipulation when you think about it, because you're putting up buying pressure on the market and you're taking out of circulation. And I think it could be looked upon from outside of the Dash ecosystem with a negative look, right? Because I don't know, like it's a bizarre thing, and there's no other case like this in cryptocurrency that I've seen before. But like, I don't know, is it an ethics issue? What do you think?
So when trying to grow a currency, if we're not able to own things, that will be problematic for us. And so if we go from there and we say, if we're not able to own things that are profitable and take some kind of share in those entities, why would we want to own them in the first place? Right? Because like in the earlier days, you had some like members of the Dash community saying, we need a way to own things, to like hold proposal owners accountable. But why would we want to own a company if that ownership has like no result to it? Like, right? Like, why would the diff want to own a company why would we give them money if they weren't returning something back to us, right? And so, I mean, I think through the steps of, okay, the network wants to be able to own things, hence it creates the diff. Okay, the diff, if it's going to own things, it naturally wants to see a profit. Otherwise, why create any Dash to begin with? And then finally, the diff wants to be able to make reinvestments according to the network's desires and or burn coins to increase the value of Dash. I think one step always leads to the next. And granted, I'm just one member of the 6 supervisors. I've been doing this for 6 months only. I know that comparing where we are now compared to where we were that first day when we got on the call with Glenn and Casey, and I was basically like, so you guys aren't in charge? Really? I think that our rate of maturation is above average. And so I would hope that, if you were to talk to me again in 6 months' time and we were to go over these kinds of questions, that I would have even better answers for you. But the most important thing to know at the end of the day is that the diff is totally beholden to the Dash network. And what we are trying to do is do what's in the best interest of thousands of people that we don't know. We're trying to, and that is twofold, because yes, you can ask someone what they want, but at the same time, we've also been delegated to do tasks so that the network doesn't have to, right? The network said, hey, let us take ourselves from many, like how many Masternode owners are there estimated to be, like between 1,000 and 2,000, whether that's shareholders or full owners. So the network has taken themselves and said, hey, let's shrink ourselves down from 2,000 to 6 so that we can have a weekly meeting, so that we can, get these things done. And so it is our job to constantly be trying to balance, okay, what will best serve all of these people, while at the same time, we don't get to call all of them and conduct surveys. And even if we did, their answers would change from day to day. Or if you put them in the same room with each other, one of them who had been staunch about one thing, if he heard another person's argument, he might be like, actually, well, right. I hadn't thought of it that way. Right. So it's not like cat juggling, but it's almost like cat juggling.
Well, that's exactly the life of an entrepreneur. If you think about it, an entrepreneur is a centralized entity that makes dictatorial decisions, but they can only afford to make those decisions if they have the consensus approval of the market. And sometimes, and that's one of the things that's like, anyone with a Dash proposal knows that there's a certain amount of guesswork in finding what exactly your employers want from you. And like the free market, no one walks into a coffee shop and says, just so you know, this is what you should do. You should have these hours. You should have this price for this product. You just succeed or don't. And you just have to figure out, why am I not getting customers? And it's then sometimes a customer might say, well, you're never open. I wish you, and then you get a hint. But a lot of times you just have to figure it out. And then based on the feedback that you get, then you start kind of shaping it around it. And that's exactly as it should be, because with central planning, you have a central group of people that just plans out, say, an economy, a nation, whatever else, and they do not have that information at their disposal to make those decisions, make them at least profitably or accurately, or in a way that doesn't involve, mass starvation. Again, that happens a lot in some of the more centrally planned economies. And instead, with the free market, people make lots of individual decisions based on lots of different bits of information known as market forces. And if it weren't for those people making individual decisions, you'd never be able to profit from all that collective information. So if like the 4,000 or 5,000 masternodes came together and just decided what the diff should do on a granular level, that would be disaster. At some point, you need people to actually make those decisions on a much smaller scale. It's just how the free market works. And how about this? Would you entertain, this is very forward thinking, of course, would you entertain the possibility of a competitor, a diff 2 and a diff 3? What if the Dash network can fund several completely independent diffs?
I mean, that's the ideal scenario, that we are able to fund whatever the hell we want to fund. And and then we have a problem of choice rather than a problem of tight budget. So yeah, I mean, and via the creation of both the Dash Trust as well as the Dash Investment Foundation, these are the things that Ryan Taylor has been saying all along, which is that he undertook the effort required to establish the legal models, and those legal models can be copied by anybody. And so at the end of the day, all decision-making ability resides with the network as a whole 100% of the time, because regardless of what some people might be saying in the comments on a particular proposal, or regardless of what some people might be saying in a Masternode only chat channel, or regardless of what, thousands of people may be saying on Twitter, all that really matters is how the votes come in the Dash treasury cycle at the end of every month. And sometimes with their votes, they're able to completely, show that some of these like shouting voices of like a dissent and anger, that those voices were actually like in the minority. And that's the super useful, like clutch element of the Dash governance system, is that it makes the Reddit just like go away. It makes the Twitter go away. It makes the personalities, like the charismatic personalities who have, lots of followers, it just makes that all go away, because the people who have something at stake all have proportionate power to their stake to say what they actually want, regardless of, what seems to be trending on Reddit or Twitter or Discord.
Yes, I found that to be very true. A lot of times you see comments either on treasury proposals themselves or on Reddit or on, Discord or whatever, give an impression that there's sentiment towards a thing. And then you just look at the votes and you're like, the votes just don't add up to that. There's clearly something else afoot. And there's a lot of people, quick to just say, it must be Dash core group, it must be centralization, it must be some whale, it must be, or how about it must be people voting and not going through, manipulation tactics or kind of like spinning up sock puppets or whatever else. It's a very beautiful thing to just have that written in stone, like the network has spoken, and then you can't really argue with that. And that source, I love the presence of debate and arguing, and I also love the ability to have that be over, to be decide despite all that.
That's a great way to put it, Joel. Like that they're both useful. Like the Thunderdome time on Reddit and Twitter and Discord, like that's useful to expose oneself to, okay, what are all the arguments out there? And what did I perhaps not consider before? But then again, as you say, Joel, to have that be just over once a month, every month, to have like all the swords, or like the lots be cast in a way that's totally unquestionable because it's cryptographically non-forgeable. It's a nice thing.
Right. There's the live chat is absolutely popping. So Amanda, I hope you're happy to take some questions. And
Sure.
Of course, Amanda is just one representative of the diff. So Amanda, please feel free to say like whether the opinions are of your own or whether you've discussed these things already. But as Amanda,
they're all my own. Yes,
yeah,
they're all
just for clarity, for disclosure, I don't want the other diff supervisors getting angry.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. I mean, even though we do have some leadership positions within the diff, Mike is the current chair and I am the current secretary. Even then, whenever we need to make a decision, we still put it up to a vote, right? So like Mike's vote doesn't count more than anybody else's, nor does mine, nor does, right? So it's still, it's always just me talking, or it's always just Mike talking. And anything that is collectively the diff is, any actual legal action we take, like any proposals we put forward, we had to vote on that collectively. Any legal acquisitions we attempt to make, obviously we voted on that internally. Yeah.
Yeah, so there was a question submitted, which I believe is in reference to one of the diff updates that you've done, Amanda. So it says, when will we find out more about companies C and A? Are we expecting a governance proposal on funding decision next cycle or February? Can you speak to that, please?
Yes, happy to. So Mike was out ill this past Monday's meeting. And so that put us about a week back on basically moving forward on the CNA, as we told you. One of them was a no-go, meaning the final decision we made was a no. So, we're not going to publicly announce the name of the company that we turned down for investment. And the other one, I will put this in an update post. Basically, we need to have one more meeting about that. And so, yeah, I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ash, I hope that answered your question. If you have any more, please put them by. I am actively keeping an eye on the comments. Some of them not always questions, but just comments based on what we're discussing. I do find it fascinating. So you say you've been speaking to investment advisors, investment managers. I'm guessing they kind of influenced you on the 100% Dash holding things. Like, what's their response been? Has they been like, this is a good idea, or this is like a terrible idea, or have you not got to that stage yet because you're still in the process of hiring, I guess?
Yeah, we didn't actually tell them about I mean, did we even talk about our reserves? I don't actually think that we did, no.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, it would just be interesting to know
what they would recommend.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because
well,
I mean,
and that will obviously play a part of our re-engineering of the policy and bringing it forward to the network, because we want to inspire confidence within the network that, yes, while we six are obviously giving it our best effort, that, okay, this time round, we actually have the weight of a professional to say, like, hey, it's not just us six, Dash investors saying this. This is a person who makes their living because hundreds or thousands of people around the world agree, hey, this person's an expert. And so, yeah, we have very high hopes for adding that to what we have to bring going forward.
So there's another interesting comment here from Ash. Not a big deal, but will the salary for the investment advisor come from the reserves or additional proposal above the 9% request? Has that been discussed yet?
It has not been discussed at length. I don't think that it would come from reserves. This is just me answering off the top of my head, because when we asked for those reserves, we told the network, this is for investment reserves. So just like in the past, when Dash Core Group wanted to allocate funds from one department to another, they put in a governance proposal because they felt like, hey, this is the right thing to do. If we asked for it to be one thing, we can't just make it another and not ask. And so, I mean, no, we wouldn't just pull from reserves. So then, yeah, that leaves the options of either asking if we can pull from reserves or putting in a proposal that says, okay, the amount that we're asking for, X is slated for this purpose.
Interesting. Yeah, because obviously, and I'm sure the people watching this, that you're not going to get a high caliber investment manager or advisor for free. And I'm guessing that's why you're probably going through the review process right now. But it's exciting times, because I remember like heavy debate saying there's no point looking for an investment advisor manager until we've got enough Dash in reserves to even do something with it. But clearly the diff supervisors feel you're at that stage now. So
yeah, I mean, so and this was one of the things that there was disagreement on in the beginning. In the beginning, I thought that we should hire an investment manager pretty much like right from the start. But then when we had more meetings, there were other voices that said, no, I don't think that anyone who was qualified for that role would be interested in our current broke ass fund at this time. And so let's like hold off. And so the sentiment to hold off was the majority sentiment at the time. And I found myself saying, okay, well, that sounds like a reasonable thing to me. But yes, as the months have gone on and as we've begun to professionalize and actually begun talking like with companies that are seeking our investment, we have changed our view on that, which is to say, we think that if we can find the right person, we anticipate that the network will agree with us that the additional expense will be worth it.
So essentially, whatever the diff decides to put forward, the network ultimately will decide in that.
Always.
Yeah. So decentralized in nature. So I don't see how anyone could be upset with that, really, because you're basically doing the due diligence, shortlisting and presenting what you think is right to the network. And then the network decides. And if not, then we move forward and we go from there. It never ends. We always move forward.
Precisely.
Excellent. Well, there's a few more comments about the diff. And I'm sorry, Amanda, I know this is meant to be the Christmas special and I've been grilling you about the diff, but clearly people are really interested in this. And
I'm happy they are, because I'm so interested in it.
And it's such a unique aspect for Dash. And, my fear was for the longest time is that it's only really in the Dash, people in the Dash ecosystem, including strategic partners, they're actually aware of it. And it's almost like, it's not that I don't want to advertise it, but if there were big opportunities, I felt like we couldn't really capitalize and take advantage of them anyway. But at the same time, I want the diff there, because although the Dash price is down with the treasury right now, if there are any entities that come to the treasury seeking funding, we then have the diff as a vehicle, as Masternode, to say, hey, actually, guess what? We want equity in return. You guys need to speak to the diff. Even if we fund this treasury grant proposal, we want you to give equity to the diff. And we couldn't do that before. So even from that aspect, the diff is a powerful thing to have. Is it not?
Right. Yes, and actually, if I weren't on the diff, if I were just standard like Dash investor, I would not want to fund any investment / grant seeking entities that were seeking profit on their own through just the treasury anymore, because that is so much due diligence that I don't want to do when the 6 diff supervisors I elected will do it for free. Like, I cannot emphasize how much more able we are to look into a company, like via having phone calls with them, via like signing NDAs and looking through their finances and their audit reports. We are able to do so much more due diligence on a potential investment within the diff that if I were not in the diff, like as like a regular Masternode owner or shareholder, I would refuse to give any funding to anybody outside of the diff for those reasons. And plus, it's like, I mean, we're here to do the outsourced work. We're doing this for free because we consider it both to be positions of honor, as well as we're all invested in Dash. And so we're highly motivated. And so like, we are, use us, use us. Yeah.
Excellent. Right. There's another question for you, Amanda, and it does move on from the diff, and I've not had a chance to see this. So hopefully you can expand on it more. So Ash, once again, if you have time, it would be great for you guys to explore more on the marketing discussion Amanda had with Tao. Her focus on actually having a product and measurable results mirrors mine. So Amanda, I haven't seen that video. So could you just like elaborate more on what Ash is talking about there?
Yeah, so
focusing on actually having a product in terms of marketing.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can just speak to my view on this, and this is something I've discussed on Tao and Amanda Live in the past, which is it is a fact that the more organized something is into, whatever form, I mean, organizations aren't always hierarchical. I think hierarchies are the most common forms of organization, right? Like CEO, CTO, COO, et cetera, and then on and on and on down. The more organized something is, the more efficient it is going to be. And something that has become exceedingly clear to me, especially through our budget contraction of the last year, is that we are competing in the cryptocurrency space not just on product. If we were competing just on product, Dash would be numero uno for payments, at least, okay? And because that is not the case, another way in which we are competing is the efficacy of how we spend our resources. And now, obviously, resources go toward developing product, yes. But they also go toward many other things, marketing being one of them, and a major one at that. And something I would like to see is our spend, our monthly spend, become more and more efficient. Meaning I want more of the people we're paying to be working in the same group as opposed to separate groups, like CEO of this, and all their stuff, and CEO of that and all their stuff, and CEO of that and all their stuff, because that is by definition less efficient, which will make us less competitive. And the strengths of decentralization are felt in the network itself, right? Like having the multiple nodes all around the world, no single point of shut off, no single point of censorship. Half of our nodes could go offline, and, I mean, I'm not a network scientist, but provided they were, at least distributed in a certain way geographically, we wouldn't even notice. And so the benefits of decentralization are on the network side. And I would like us to start over time as a network deciding that we would like to fund fewer organizations as opposed to more. And granted, that doesn't mean that some of the various heads of various organizations that we fund right now would go away. On the contrary, if they're doing a great job, if they're great at what they do, we should want them to be absorbed by one of the other groups so that they can then synergize by working within the same organization. And so a side benefit of all of that is that masternodes and owners and shareholders would have fewer things to evaluate every month. Because if you're evaluating like 4 or 5 proposals total every month, you're going to be able to pay more attention to those and have less of that sort of like aching feeling of like, did I vote on that without like having, maybe I should have looked more into it, but damn, it would take like another hour to try to, there would be like less of that feeling the fewer the proposals we're voting on, 4 or 5, as opposed to like, my God, the due diligence involved in voting on 15 proposals, that's insane.
Pretty crazy.
And so my view is that, and this comes from my experience of having been somewhat of a marketer for Dash in the past, is that I had a hell of a time trying to sell Dash when I was outside of the heart of production. And the heart of production is Dash Core Group. And it was a hell of a thing to try to sell something that I wasn't able to like observe the production of, and to be a part of like the regular updates of, and to get regular memos and feel the synergy of having team members. And so in my view, a marketing spend coming from the Dash treasury, and that I believe needs to be increased greatly, would need to be funneled through Dash Core Group, so that the marketer, the head of marketing is able to be right in the heart of it, right in the thick of it. And so, so that's my stance. But with regard to what Tao said, and this is something that if you all haven't watched the video that Tao put out about marketing today, I do recommend it, because what he's referencing is this TED Talk by this guy named Simon, I think it's Sinek. And this Simon guy, he's like describing Dash word for word, but of course he's not talking about Dash. But what he is saying is that like every company, so he draws this ring. There's like an inner ring, a secondary ring, and then a third ring. And in the third ring, he says, is the what. And he says everybody knows what it is they do, right? So you make tires, or you give massages, or you mint digital coins, right? You know your what. The ring just inside that is the how. And so the how is, we have a factory, or we have a website, or in the case of Dash, we have a distributed network, with a DAO and etc. And then he says that the inner ring is the one that only the best marketers, the people who end up going to the top, they're the only ones who bother to market their why. And the why is basically, what do you as a company believe? And once you state what you believe, then others who also believe what you believe will just start paying attention. And they'll just like resonate with your product, not because of the what's, not because they're like, hooray, chain locks. Oh, or like, hooray, respendable instant send. We've already seen that. We've already seen that the market is like, chain locks, like, wake me, when you have something exciting to say, right? So he basically says that people are not excited by what. They're not really very excited by how, but they will get excited about why. And so going forward, as we hopefully spend more of our monthly treasury on marketing, I would like to see it funneled through Dash Core Group, through an individual who understands that Dash has not yet sold its why, and that it is time for us to now sell our why.
Problem is, there's multiple whys. Because like in the marketplace that we're in right now, it's very tricky. Like in 2018, it was like the year of merchant adoption for Dash. But where CoinMarketCap is mostly 95% based on speculation and not utility, price-wise, the market doesn't value merchant adoption clearly because they're speculating. Now, when it actually comes to
crypto markets,
when it comes to like use cases and user friendly, you remember the term, crypto your grandmother can use, that was using back in the day. But now Dash, as we move forward into 2020 with Dash platform and Dash Pay enabled application wallets, now we have multiple target groups. The biggest market we have is the retail investor. As you say, our number one killer feature is payments. So users. So moving forward, we will have the Dash Pay wallet with Dash Pay blockchain username functionality and hopefully a user-friendly interface, so we can do that. However, that's just one. We then got businesses, merchants that we can case to, but more importantly, for the success of Dash platform, now we need to market towards developers as well, because the success of Dash platform is dependent on third-party developers building upon it, because we don't know ultimately what Dash platform is going to like, because it's the services and features that are going to be built upon it, utilizing the key foundation. So like, it's exciting times, but like it's almost like you can't prioritize one, but you have to have like a multi-pronged approach, I feel. And I think like we really have to have a really good strategy moving forward. I mean, Amanda, I don't know how you feel about developers, but with Dash platform and everything else, like we've not really focused on that area yet. We've got community developers in Discord, but I think we're really going to have to do something special to attract top talent. What do you think about that?
I think that you're spot on. And that is something like these concerns of like, okay, we have like different segments that we need to reach, and there's a different message that needs to go out to each of them, how to do this. Thankfully, that's something that experienced CMOs actually know how to do. That's actually what they're paid for. And so I am confident that an experienced CMO would be able to segment out the different demographics of Dash, would potentially be able to determine even their the potential value that they could return to the product, right? Like, is it one of those situations where 80% of the user base accounts for 20% of the income? Or, is it some mix thereof? And basically who needs to hear what? And then that's something that their professionalism would take care of. And again, it's just like the diff, right? It's just like the rest of us just get to like sit back and be like, thank God I don't have to figure out all these things by myself. None of us is a specialist in everything. How many of us is even a specialist in like 2 or 3 things, right? Like, we're lucky if we're a specialist in one thing. And right.
Yeah,
so
most people are terriblists at one thing.
And so, this is of course where, the division of labor should solve that problem for us.
Yeah, and that's been the challenge of marketing anything in cryptos, but especially Dash, is because right now Dash is further advanced than a lot of these other projects. Dash is not that much of a product. It's still kind of like an untamed natural resource, because you say Dash is great for payments. All right, can I pay my grandma in Mexico with it right now? Yes, you can. Well, what can she spend it on? Does she know how to use it? And it's like, okay, Dash is not a product for Mexico. Now there is a remittance product that uses Dash called Remisasa that I can use. And that actually gets into something that grandma can spend down in Mexico. But I need the Dash first. How do I get the Dash first? Is there a funnel connected? It's kind of still an untamed resource even today. I mean, good luck with other coins and stuff. So that's been one of the main challenges why I think even in its heyday, Dash did not allocate a ton of money behind giant splashy marketing budgets or a CMO with the whole big thing, is because what is there to market? There is not that much of a product. Now we've been working on that product. We've been making it better, and evolution is, of course, a great step towards that product, a product that people actually want to use once they're marketed to. But as Mark was pointing out, the other product is just platform, just existing, just something that developers actually want, because you don't need it. Developers don't need a finished product. They just need something to build on. That's what they do. And so it might be that before we can actually market to individual consumers, first off, we can market to crypto people right now because they're already using crypto. They're already kind of in this. And there has to be a competitive advantage for Dash to work for them above what they already do. And that's, a different conversation, I'm sure. But as far as the actual, when platform's out, that's something you can market that's ready when it's ready. Even when it's on testnet, it's ready to play around with before it's out in a few months. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Sorry. No, please.
Yeah. So absolutely. I think right now, it's not that we've got an identity crisis. It's kind of like, what do we shout from the rooftops? And most importantly, and this is why I do resonate with what Amanda's been saying, we all need to be singing from the same hymn sheet. If we're all rowing in different directions, then it's problematic, right? And I understand that, and I see that as well. Now, one of the interesting things Amanda has said, and I'm curious to know what the community think and how they will respond to this, because in the past, Dash in itself has utilized the treasury to hire third parties, whether it's for marketing, PR, everything else. And Amanda's suggesting to bring that in-house and, if necessary, hire the expertise required to do that job role and function. So I'd be interested to know how the community feel about that and engage the sentiment on that part. Now, I've personally felt in the past about having an internal PR firm, because I constantly feel like we're playing like circles and do-si-do, and then we lose all that expertise every time we switch up all those contacts, everything else. And it's like back to the beginning again. But Amanda, there's one big problem in this. So I don't want to say you're for centralization, but there is a problem right now with budgetary constraints. Dash Core Group gave guidance that they will only take a maximum of 60% from the treasury per monthly budget cycle. So it's not like they've got the budget where they can headhunt top talent. How are you going to get around this problem?
Yeah, excellent point. So there are one of two ways. One is either the price improves, potentially via switching up the economics of Dash, as Ryan Taylor has proposed. And as Fernando Gutierrez said in an interview with Rodrigo, I think it was Rodrigo Ambrisi the other day, that this change could potentially be implemented relatively quickly. So either that happens, or the network chooses to allocate more than 60% of the budget to Dash Core Group for the express purpose of, in this case, marketing.
Could you have like a separate proposal for marketing, even though if it was internal in-house, would that work?
I mean, I'm sure they could, but as we've seen Ryan Taylor say, he thinks he can guide his ship best when it's kind of like an all or nothing deal, but he does keep a lookout to say, as he's asking for all or nothings, he keeps a lookout to see the general approval level. And if it starts to slip, then he starts to be like, okay, clearly the all or nothing is losing its popularity. I'll begin parsing out. And so that's a strategy that seems to work for him in the past. And so, I think that the ideal scenario is that the economics of Dash get improved to the point that putting more resources into professional in-house marketing via DCG is not a threat as far as their personal commitment to not exceed 50%. Granted, that's not anything any of us ever voted on, but it's something that they want to commit to. All of this aside, I will say that I do wish that, do you all remember, I'm sure you all do, that I think it was maybe 4-5 months ago when the conversation around, well, how much mining do we really need, if we even need mining after all, started to really get kicked off. And Ryan said publicly, were such a change as like a decrease in, block reward to miners, or even an elimination of block reward to miners, if that were to take place, it would be put potentially years into the future to provide those individuals with the time required to allocate their capital outlays as necessary. And but what I'm hearing now is that this potential reduction and or elimination of proof of work, the vote for it may come up, relatively quickly, and then the action of acting on that governance vote may come about relatively quickly after that as well. So in a way, if that's how it happens, and maybe that's how it needs to happen for Dash to not crash and burn, but I don't feel the best about it, given that, I don't know, actually, I'll say this is more accurate. I don't know how to feel about it until I hear like from some miners. And I would just like to hear from miners, like, what, as a miner, do you think, like, hey, yes, I'm invested in all this X11 equipment, but really, like, I'm also invested in Dash, and I'd rather Dash pull itself out of this gaping black hole that it's in, price-wise, than me be able to run these machines for another 2 years. Or, basically, like, what do miners think? I'd really like to know that.
Well, it's very interesting when you look at the hash rate, because Dash's hash rate has been steady / increasing. And what you notice, for example, when you watch market capitalization of Litecoin versus Litecoin's hash rate is very closely correlated, up and down. Miners mine for the profit, and that's it, or the short-term profit. And it could be because there's a higher pool of script mineable coins that they can just mine instead if Litecoin's not profitable anymore, and Dash's X11 pool isn't as big. But with Bitcoin, you see BTC, you see the price and hash rate sort of track, but you see hash rate of Bitcoin has been going up despite lagging prices at least since late 2017 or early 2018. We see the exact same thing with Dash, where miners seem to be sort of front running the price, except over the last 2 months in particular, it's been like the divergence between price and hash rate has been much more dramatic, where miners are mining at an even more acute loss. So it seems like miners are mining assuming the price of Dash will be much higher in the possibly near future. Mm-hmm. And it might just be kind of a market speculative thing, but that's exactly it. Is if you're a miner and you make, however many units of Dash and are in the hole, and then all of a sudden you make, let's just say, a quarter as much or less, like you make 20% as much Dash as you were making for the same hash rate, because the reward gets cut down to, say, 10% block reward goes to the miners. But if the price goes up enough, then you might actually be making more than you were before. So I think that's kind of that idea.
This is just an observation on my part, but I think Amanda does raise a good point. All three of us present in this podcast have been in Dash for years now. And I remember before the Discord days on the Slack channel, there was a dedicated mining channel, and it was popping. It was always busy. I remember Dash Cats like Darkwater always in there. And I even remember YouTubers at that time were doing videos, and they were doing Genesis mining contract polls where they would take their users and allocate some things. And even me myself was involved in the Bitmain Antminer D3 miners, and they flooded the market. But now that community of retail miners doesn't really exist in any of the Discords anymore or anything else. I don't see it. It's almost like it's all moved to cloud-based mining. And I don't really see the community in the community-based channels talking about mining. So it's really interesting to gauge. And of course, people that bought those D3 miners and Bitmain, as I said, I had 2, they completely flooded the market. And it wasn't even profitable to even mine it anymore. It was ridiculous. So people were constantly underwater. So it's really interesting seeing the hash rate in Dash pretty much at all-time highs. When we've had this situation going on, it's like, who is mining Dash? Like, who is? Because like no one in the community is talking about it. What's going on?
There's one of 2 options on a very basic level. It's either people are mining Dash at a loss, which would indicate they expect the price to go up, or people are mining Dash much more efficiently due to new ASICs and new technology being built, which would indicate they're mining at just a break-even profit or whatever now. But the fact that such things are being developed means that someone is anticipating a robust future Dash mining economy.
Yeah, it is interesting. And I really wish some miners would speak up. I actually believe Genesis Mining might have actually been present at the actual open house event where Ryan was talking about store value. I may be mistaken by that, but that would be really interesting because obviously with their data centers and everything else, they're investing in a lot of equipment. And for those that are familiar with mining, even when I had my D3 miners and it wasn't even profitable to mine Dash, I looked at what other coins were available on the X11 algorithm that I could mine. And you know what? It was like less than a handful. And I believe that still is the case. And most of the coins you're not even heard of. It wasn't a pot coin. It was like one called Cannabis Coin. But the other ones I never even heard of. So that all these people, I can just imagine. I mean, my D3 miners, I just packed them back up, put them in the box. I actually sold one of them, like pretty sharpish. But like I can foresee people having all these D3 miners just boxed up, not even using them. So yeah, I'm curious. So if you are a miner, please comment in the chat or get on the community Discord. We want to hear from you, not just a matter. I want to hear from you. Like, what is going on? Because it seems like a lot of people sign up for these cloud-based contracts, and I just don't want to say Genesis Mining. There's nice hash and things as well, but they're typically like 12-month, 24-month contracts you're signing up for. I mean, Amanda, if you was bullish on Dash and knowing what you've just seen at the open house event, would you want to sign up for a 24-month mining contract with Dash right now? Honestly, it's up in the air, right? So I mean, this is why we need to have a conversation and know what is going on. But anyway, mining aside, and because the podcast's going on, and we probably spoke about the diff too much. It is Christmas, so like I want to just talk about Dash in general and find where we're at, because we've got this opportunity with Amanda and it'd be a shame not to use it to its full advantage. So Amanda is right. Dash's best feature is payments, right? Now, Amanda spoke about marketing as well. But Amanda, in general with Dash, are you happy with the current state of play? You've seen Dash through many different chapters and stages, and it's like we're just about to enter a new stage with Dash platform. Are you happy in yourself with Dash right now?
Yeah. Am I happy in myself? I mean, yeah. I mean, if we're talking, that's a very simple question that to give a simple answer, because that question begs a yes or a no answer, when of course there are facets upon facets all around. But taken on the whole, in aggregate, yes, I am.
So strengths-wise, you're happy with development, the releases, the direction that Dash is going in with Dash platform, and the future that it holds. But with those strengths, of course, there's always weaknesses. There's always areas to improve, and we can't just live in an echo chamber. And one of those weaknesses, so to speak, where you think we can improve on is marketing. Is there any other areas within Dash that you would like to see improvements upon? The choosing, the individual investors choosing to fund fewer groups rather than more groups, so that we can have more efficiency and more synergy.
Yeah, I kind of agree in not as far as like a forced thing, but it's kind of the natural market state of things. Ever since I've been involved with, like, I remember the time when Dash Core Group was like at 80% of the budget or more, or sorry, Dash Core was not officially Dash Core Group until later. And I remember that time, and it was mostly one centralized group doing pretty much everything, and one centralized kind of makes it seem like it's on purpose. One central group doing everything, and then a bunch of little hodgepodge, fund my meetup, fund my adoption initiative, like I'm going to make videos, I'm going to run some news thing, a bunch of small little organizations like that. Then, starting in late 2016, so just about this time of year, remember, Mark, with the first successful Dash Force proposal? So we're 3 now. So we're little toddlers, finally.
Amanda was a kind of original Dash News member, writer back in the day. For those that don't know, Amanda's actually a very talented writer. She's done many great writing pieces on Cointelegraph, Bitcoin. No, it's true.
Yes. But so the point being, so we've been around for a while, and we've had a team for 3 years straight. But it was still like Dash Core and then Dash Force and then a bunch of weird little one-off projects. And then over time, now we have the Dash Embassy, our good German region folks that have been sort of a permanent-esque fixture. We've had Dash Watch. Now we have the Diff. Now we have a few other groups that are more permanent fixtures, and then fewer just new Yahoos coming in and doing little things. So this process has made fewer total groups, but have had also less centralization as well, which is the way the market should go, right? Rather than just one big group that matters and a whole bunch of little ones that just kind of don't, but a million of them. Now you have fewer, so you can actually pay attention to like 5 or 6 big groups or fewer. But at the same time, it's not like one group controls everything. So I think we're seeing that vision come into play. And I hear rumor of another developer group maybe cropping up at some point, but that's just rumors.
Well, I do want to say that there would never be one group in charge, because by design, the masternodes owners and shareholders are always in charge. So if they choose over time to fund just one group because they want to maximize the impact of their limited resources, it's still not one group in charge. It's still thousands of people in charge voluntarily saying, we want all of our force coming out this single funnel to maximize the force and speed at which it is deployed.
Excellent. Okay, guys, I want to shift the conversation a little bit, because someone's raised the topic about travel by bit, and I feel, Joelle, very quickly, if you can just comment to this, because this was really big news today. Amanda was saying how Dash is #1 for payments, and if there's any story out there in the general crypto news world right now, this would be it. So, Joelle, what is the travel by bit news today?
Yes, so Travel by Bit has been one of the foremost organizations about crypto adoption that's been kind of in the headlines for years. It's basically, it started with the Brisbane airport in Australia, and it essentially is a point-of-sale provider for cryptocurrencies. And there's a whole bunch of merchants that accept cryptocurrencies through it. Now, I have not done research into this, so don't quote this as fake news or whatever if it's wrong. But I believe Australia is one of the stronger, more Bitcoin Cash leaning areas of the world. Like if you would say Venezuela is all about Dash, you might say Australia is all about Bitcoin Cash. Now, there was a video that, calling viral video, I don't know how viral it has to be before it's called viral, but showing a double spend of a BTC, of a Bitcoin transaction at one of these Travel by Bit businesses. And it got a lot of negative press, etc. And that has caused Travel by Bit to say they will remove BTC Bitcoin regular payments as a payment option at 400 merchants in Australia.
I did not see this story today.
And Bitcoin Cash.
Well, hold on. But they also said, so it was a kind of pro Bitcoin Cash person, from my understanding. Again, there's a lot of hair splitting that can be done when you're trying to call people yeah, it's fake news. From my understanding, the person who leaked the video or filmed the video was a pro Bitcoin Cash person who was trying to show that BTC is not as secure as BCH for transactions due to double spendability. But it ended up being that Travel by Bit suspended both. So both Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash lost 400 merchants in Australia. The caveat being, first off, they have maintained Lightning Network payments because they believe that that's more secure instantly, and that's That's another conversation. They might have to learn the hard way.
Joel, so we should be clear. This was a double spend exploit.
Yes. Yes, it was a double spend exploit, and as a result, 400 merchants went offline, or 400 merchants will no longer be able to receive Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash payments. So,
do they accept Dash though? Does Travel by Bit accept Dash?
They used to. They definitely used to. I have heard conflicting stories recently of like, well, yeah, they still do, or yeah, they do, but they're not by default on merchants, or most of those merchants don't.
They're definitely watching what we're doing because their official account followed me today after our tweets about it. So they're definitely watching. But this is right, Amanda. This is why people should be using Dash. Can you double spend with Dash? No, you can't. We've got instant automatic instant send, and we've got chain locks as well. Grr. Like, come on, people. If it's about utility and real world use, and look, we've already addressed the coin market cap is mainly based on speculation. Look, if there's Bitcoiners here, I'm sorry. If you want to hold Bitcoin, yes, I know it's the dominant player. If you want to hold that as a store of value, that's much better than having fiat currency. Good on you. More power to you. However, if you want to become your own bank and take back control, and you need to make everyday payments, Dash is probably the best option. I'm just saying.
Let me cut into the shilling just a little bit to introduce some fairness. We want to be fair and balanced, just like Fox News. Am I right? Anyway, to be fair, Bitcoin Cash does not have replaced by fee. Neither does Dash. And it's more difficult to double spend than Bitcoin, which is more child's play. And also, to be fair, it is relatively difficult to, and you can have and I can already hear right now, like all the Vin Armanis of the world. Well, but if you have the node configuration right now, it won't let you this and that. Yeah, sure. But it's still possible. Now, to be fairness, until recently, like the beginning of the year, 90% plus of Dash's payments were just like all the others. Instant send was optional. Very few wallets had that option, and even fewer services actually recognize an instant send payment. However, now virtually all Dash transactions are instant send enabled by default. There's very few that just don't end up being locked for whatever reason. And it's like, so that's basically 99%, let's say, of all Dash payments are permanently, instantly settled. You don't have to worry about that. That was not always the case for Dash, but it is the case for the majority of this year.
Okay, right. I think one more question, and then we should think about wrapping this up. We're 1 hour, 20 minutes in. I know it's exciting, everyone, to have Amanda on the show, but I think Amanda's kindly agreed to come into the after party. So if you want to continue this conversation and questions.
That's true. My beers are going to get warm if we don't head to the after party soon.
This is it. So, okay, so let's try and make this the last final question. And it's a goodie because I was just talking to Amanda about this other day, but I don't want to put words in her mouth. So, Halawe asks, will Amanda consider doing a Dash School version for Dash platform once we know more about it? Amanda, what do you say?
Yeah.
No pressure.
So in my view, outreach materials, whether they be going to developers or end consumers or, B2B, what have you, they're all part of marketing. They all ought to carry the same image, the same tone, the same branding, so as to create a unified sort of imaging. And we don't have that in Dash right now, right? We have 10 different Dash websites. We have like 15 different Dash Twitter accounts. Some of the Dash websites have like their own slogans. Some call Dash one thing, some call Dash another thing. And this has been a natural part of having, over the years, of having, of Masternodes choosing to allocate funds to various, in some ways, competing proposals. And that's cool that's what we've been doing for years, because I understand the impetus. I'll share now what I shared with Mark in our test call the other day, which is before I ever put in my first proposal to do like Dash's, I called the proposal like Dash's own YouTube show. I was in talks with Evan Duffield, who was in and around and active at the time. And I told him, I'm very interested in Dash. I'd like to help out. How can I help? And obviously I just had closed the daily decrypt. So I said, I'm fresh and hot on video skills. Is that something that maybe I could help out with? And Evan Duffield asked me if I wanted to join the core group as like the person who produced for the YouTube channel. And I remember thinking upon that, and I eventually decided, no, I don't, because I want to have the ability and freedom to say, go in a different direction than my employers at Dash Core Group might want me to. Or what if another group pops up in a year or two that's like better than Dash Core Group? And I would rather work for them. So what I'm trying to say in short is, at the time, it's so early in Dash, with various people, technically able to apply for funding, but it wasn't really happening yet. I was not sure what the future would hold. And so I declined Evan's offer and eventually went on to put in my own proposal, right? But we're now 3 or 4 years past that. And we've been having competition for treasury funds this whole time. And of course, by design, technically we always will. Technically anybody can always put in a proposal if they're willing to pay the 5 Dash. And what we have seen over time, in my view, is we have gotten to what I would consider to be the results of that competition, which is we have a group, which is the longest running group in Dash, has been the only group to have the foresight and put in the effort to make themselves legally ownable by us, so that they are 100% beholden to us. And this group has laid off good people in order to be able to afford to continue working for us. And this group is by far the most complex. This group has by far built out the most professional, again, a hierarchical corporate structure. And so to me, the competition for treasury funds is drawing to a close, in that we are seeing the clear winner of the competition. And the clear winner of that competition is Dash Core Group. And so, as I had said, I want to see far more marketing resources deployed through Dash Core Group in the future, through an experienced CMO. And that CMO, to answer your question, I think it was Halawe, to answer your question, Halawe, that CMO would be the person in charge of creating a globally visible Dash brand and image and tone, and making developer outreach videos like a Dash school for platform falls within that umbrella. So it would be up to that person to make a global strategy that includes all of these things, because I'm not interested in doing one-off things anymore. Not me. I don't want other people doing it. I don't want all of us, every time one of us has a good idea in Dash, to just freaking like spin it up and throw it out there, with different branding on a different YouTube channel, on a different website. Like, we've scattered our resources to the wind in the past to see what seeds stuck and grew. And now that we've seen what plants are growing strong, I want us to all get behind those plants rather than keep trying to plant more and more and more and spread ourselves out further. And so, yes, I will consider doing a Dash school for platform if the CMO of Dash Core Group, as a part of his global branding and outreach and marketing strategy, sends me an email and asks me to.
So if I set up a call with, because I was already seeking to speak to Dana, because we're already anticipating the Dash platform developer documentation portal to launch in sync at the same time as the testnet portal. I think we need to break that down. So you're saying that you would be open to it. So if I engage Dash Core Group and we brought everyone together, and even if it was a separate proposal to fund it, say a 10 video series, just breaking down what is Dash Drive, what is Dash Platform, how is a Dash data contract different to an Ethereum smart contract, I think that in a short context video to actually filter and funnel people through into this developer portal the documentation is really needed. I think it's, there's going to be a multi-pronged approach to reach out to developers, but something like that, even from within the community, I see right now as very problematic, because over the Christmas period, people are going to be having festive cheer with their friends and family, and their family are going to be like, how's that crypto doing? And they're going to be like, amazing, because Dash is launching their Dash platform, and it's got all this cool stuff. It's got Dash DAPI, Dash Drive. Ooh, what's that? And they'll be like, So having these resources that give a simple, clear, concise description of what they are, and then also, if they are developers, then can look a bit further with a link to the documentation portal, is ideal. And obviously, Amanda, I know from within the community, our time, I mean, obviously we used to work together a little bit. A long day since the Mr. Hustle days, but I mean, it's been, but my point being is that I acknowledge, and I think the community acknowledges, that a lot of people came into Dash through your Dash Call videos. And really, for the most part, one of the things that grinds my gears is that the official Dash YouTube channel, that I feel like we both worked towards building up that YouTube channel at following. Do you remember we used to do the firework gifts, when it got to like 5,000 followers and everything else? Like we were championing that back in the day, and now it's just sitting there collecting dust. And then once a quarter, every year, there's a summary call. And like, I really feel we need to utilize that more. So if you don't want to do it, I'll get someone to do it. But I think in terms of people that have been involved in it, we've come on this journey, and I think it makes sense. And I agree with you. You need to get everyone around the table, predominantly Dash Call group, to make sure the messaging and description is clear. But I think that is absolutely needed. We can't just rely on the videos of the presentation of Dash platform at the Open House event and the Dash Convention Europe to carry us past the finish line. That old motto, Amanda, like, that the technology will take us past the finish line. I don't believe that. There's many variables in it. If people don't know about it, they're not talking about it. And there has to be a vehicle of communication to do that. So if you're willing and able, I'd love to initiate conversations with that Dash Call group. What do you say?
If I get an email from Dash Core Group's CMO that seeks to ask me to join a part of the global strategy, then I will respond to that.
You hear that, Fernando? Ball's in your court.
Okay, excellent. Well, I've already discussed this with Fernando. I've already requested early access to the developer documentation portal. I think it needs a clear communicator to break down the terminology, even for just, social media use, so people can actually share what things actually mean. Because people like DApps, well, EOS, Ethereum, there are other platforms doing this, and people don't know, like, the simple questions. And even from an SEO keyword point of view, which I know, Amanda, you're very passionate about marketing, that's why I mentioned the Dash data contract and the Ethereum smart contracts, because if I was a developer, that's the first thing I would want to ask. We can't just expect people to know, and developers like, oh yeah, I'm going to build a DApp on Dash. They're going to have to know how to plug in and make that work. Like, how do these Dash blockchain usernames plug in and work? What is this Dash DAPI? What is the glue that sticks everything together? Like, they're not just going to come to the developer document portal and just be like, oh, this is amazing. No. We need to have multiple ways to communicate with developers, and then once that's done, then we can look at hackathons and everything else. But we need to have the right resources and communication that actually break that down. And the developers do a fantastic job at what they do. There's been a phenomenal year of releases, but I think in terms of communication and getting that message out, we all need to work together. And as I say, sing from the same hymn sheet and get that message out. Anyway. All good? Everyone happy with that? Any more final thoughts on that?
No, I'm ready to go get my brewski and come to my first Dash News after party.
Okay, excellent. Well, in that case, I'd like to thank you, Amanda, for coming on. Just before we wrap up and Joelle does the outro, let's just talk about social media links. So earlier on, you mentioned about diff updates. So they are posted to the DashPay subreddit, but they also posted on Twitter as well. And that's at Dash Invests. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And also as well, the website for the Dash Investment Foundation is that dashinvest.org. Is that correct?
That's correct. And there's a contact form there. That is where inbound inquiries can be directed. And
your personal Twitter is at?
Amanda B_Johnson.
Oh, that's going to be really difficult to remember. Okay.
Write it down just in case.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thanks, Amanda, for coming on. Much
Thanks,
appreciated. Okay, Joel, would you like to take us out?
Yes, absolutely. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. You know we say it every week, and you know you don't always do it, but this is the time to always do it. All right? Go do it. And don't forget that we have an audio-only version of this, and that gets linked in the Saturday recap post for this. So when you see the post on dashnews.org, your number one source for Dash and cryptocurrency news, on Saturday, you're going to go in there. There's going to be audio-only links, and you can listen to it at your gym time, your workout, whatever you're doing. So also it's time for the much fabled, much referenced after party, which is just like this, except don't worry, it's not public. It's not published everywhere, except it's not just the three of us. It's as many people as want to join, really. We just all come together and just hang out, have a good time, brainstorm this kind of stuff that, we only see the tip of the iceberg of the conversations on the public videos. But there's just so much that goes on, sometimes arguing, usually making of merry, and all kinds of good stuff. So if you want in on that, you have to go to the Dash Talk Discord. That's staydashy.com. In the live chat, you'll see it. And then just start asking around. It's like a speakeasy, right? Hey, where's the after party? Here's the after party. You start asking about it, and then we'll let you in. And if myself or Mark, we're the ones to specifically ping if you want to get our attention. But someone should definitely get you in.
Excellent. Thank you, Joel. Well, that was episode 135 of the Dash podcast. I hope you found this to be informative. Please like, share, and subscribe. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please hit the notification bell to be alerted about future video content. Thank you, Amanda. Amanda has spoken. So I would just like to say a personal thank you to the Dash community and Masternode network for your continued support. I hope everyone has a jolly, festive, Merry Christmas. Enjoy it. I hope that the 2020 will be a fantastic, or should I say Dash-tastic year for Dash. We've got lots to look forward to and excited to with Dash platform. And let's just keep the community spirit going. Without the community, we are nothing. So with that being said, I would just like to say, stay safe, stay happy, stay merry. But most importantly, stay dashy. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Such wow.